Hi there, Kimberly Garner here for another day of sharing conversations that no one's talking about. And so today I want to chat a little bit about consciousness and really break down this concept of consciousness and what is it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining in. I am sharing a conversation about consciousness and the aspects of consciousness just so that we can simplify what is went off a little bit. Okay. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me. My Wi-Fi just cut out. So anyway, I want to jump into consciousness and break this down so that we, one, have a better understanding of what consciousness is, but also how we can elevate our consciousness. And so the word I really want to focus on today is observation. And so how we observe our life, ourself, what's going on around us is this hidden opportunity for expanding our consciousness. So there's a relationship. So there's three different fields that I just want to touch on. And so one is observation and quantum physics. The next, we've been talking a lot about this week, is epigenetics and our environment. And then the last one is neuroscience and neuroplasticity, which has to do with our thoughts and our mind. Now, the thread through all three of these is the nervous system, because the nervous system truly is like the alchemist for what's going on in our inner environment and what's showing up in our outer environment. And there are three catalysts to directing the nervous system. And one is our home, one is our desire, and one is our mind. Now, when I speak to the mind, it is the mind-body connection, because we can't have one without the other. Like, you cannot have fear without feeling it in your body. You cannot have bliss without feeling it in your body. You cannot have a thought without your body instantaneously responding on a cellular level. So when I speak of mind, it is absolutely part of the nervous system. So observation and quantum physics. Quantum physics has determined, and this isn't new science, like this has been around for a while, that atoms behave differently when they're being observed. Okay, so just by observation, we change outcomes. Okay, so I'm going to weave all of this through as we're having this discussion. So quantum physics, observation changes outcomes. Epigenetics, environment informs outcomes. Neuroplasticity, thoughts become things. Our thoughts change our outcomes. And all of this is because it's in communication with our nervous system. Our nervous system is our central nervous system. And so nothing happens in our external environment, nothing happens in our internal environment without the nervous system immediately having a response. And then a response, a reaction. And that's a feeling or an emotion. And so because we're human beings, and because we have an internal environment of our mind, and we have an internal environment of our home, right, the interior of our home, we want to set ourselves up so that we regulate our nervous system, so that we soothe our nervous system, so that we can set ourselves up to flourish and thrive and evolve toward those things that we want. And that's where our desire comes in. We want to realize that we have the potential to direct the outcomes of our life, and we want to do that so that we're aligned with our desire. What we're calling in is aligned with our desire. And so I'm just going to repeat these because these are conversations that I want to have more of, and I don't think enough people are having these conversations. So how we observe is impacting our outcomes. What's going on in our outer environment is affecting our outcomes. An outcome could be a circumstance changing, or it could just be a feeling changing. So our thoughts and our words hold the potential for us to change what we want. The narrative of how we observe, okay, so when you think of observation, we're looking at what's going on, okay, so we have an image of what's going on around us through our five senses, and we're translating it into meaning. And so how we observe, how we translate what we're seeing into meaning and into a story is changing our outcomes. So I could be sitting in a chair and I could be I'm sitting in a chair now, so that's why I said that. So I can observe something and I can think, okay, well, the wind is blowing and it's a little bit chilly and it's a little cloudy. I bet it's going to rain. And someone else could sit here and have a totally different experience, or that's not a great example. Sorry. I just do these on the fly. I get inspired. And so my examples in the moment might not be so great. How I observe my life situation and the story that I put around that would be very different than if someone from Palestine, from Gaza, were sitting in my seat right now. They would have a very different narrative, and they would observe what's happening in the environment very differently than what I'm experiencing right now. If someone from New York City who, let's say, lived on the streets or lived in a mansion or whatever, if they were sitting in my seat and observing what I'm observing, and if this was their life, they would have a very different experience. And so the point is how we observe what's going on in our environment is a superpower. It holds potential for change. And so we want to start getting curious about how we are observing what's going on around us, because how we observe changes the outcomes. Okay, so if you think about there is a car you want to get, and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, the same color, like exactly what you want, how you're observing is changing what's showing up in your world. Okay, so how we observe circumstances is going to change what's showing up. And so if we look at our circumstances and we think, oh my gosh, my life is going to hell, like everything is falling apart, then we're perpetuating more of that outcome. And remember, this is quantum physics. This is epigenetics. This is neuroscience. How we observe what's going on in our environment, so how we're translating it within our mind, is going to determine or undermine or perpetuate what's showing up. And so when you think of your internal environment and the chatter, we don't have that many different thoughts happening every day. Like there aren't a diverse amount of thoughts happening. Most of the thoughts happening in our mind are in this range of our belief system. So whatever our belief system is, our thoughts are sort of holding whatever those thoughts are. Okay, so I'm going to read a comment. I wonder how this might relate to your work on clutter and our spaces as we relate to them. Okay, really good question. Thanks for reining me back in. So our environment, every item in our home communicates a specific language, and I call it the language of home. I also call it neurospatial linguistics. And so what you want to do is you want to get really curious about the language everything in your home is communicating, whether it's the art, whether it's the clutter, whether it's the photos. A classic example of this is if you have a picture on the wall, and let's say it's all the people you love are in this picture, but something happened right after this picture that doesn't feel good. Maybe a family member said something, maybe something happened, but whenever you see that picture, you're on a subconscious level, you are reminded of this negative thing that happened or this uncomfortable thing that happened. And so when you understand that we have 50,000 to 75,000 thoughts every single day. And when you realize that every single item in your home, or even the orientation of it, or even the architectural elements, they're all communicating with us on some level. And so when you see that image on the wall that brings up an uncomfortable memory, you are seeding one of those 50,000 to 75,000 thoughts that are showing up every day. And the reason why we know that this is true is because if that same picture on the wall is just a little bit askew, if it's just a little bit unlevel, our subconscious mind notices it. And so we may not be consciously aware of these conversations that are happening in the background of our mind, but they're still happening. So that's one way. If the furniture arrangement in a specific room is overcrowded, that's going to cause a certain level of strain on the nervous system. And it all depends on your personal story. Like there's the sweet spot between this primal experience or this universal experience or societal experience and something that's personal for us. So if our personal experience and our personal story is different, that's the priority. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Does that answer your question about how we might interpret all of this, like observation and epigenetics? You know, if observation changes outcome and we are constantly observing our space in a certain way, that's connected to the epigenetic part of this, is if our environment is informing our outcomes and we're living in a space where, you know, I speak to the bedroom. If our bedroom is not a place that reflects our level of self-love, and if our level of self-love is not healthy, right? A lot of us are really hard on ourselves. Okay, good. I'm glad that helped. We want our environment to support us, and our environment can bolster those things that are not strong within us. And so if our self-love and our self-value is diminished and it's not healthy, we can address that within the space of our home. So we can bolster and remedy these things that are happening within our internal environment. We can use our physical environment of our home so that it backs up those values that we really want to nurture and nourish and cultivate. So our primary residence, where we live, is giving us a lot of feedback, and how we're observing our space on a subconscious level is impacting us on an internal level. And what's going on an internal level is showing up in our life. And here's the other thing about our home. Our home is perpetuating this language. Our home is perpetuating these cycles and these patterns that are happening in our life. And so we want to use the space of our home so it perpetuates those things that we want to experience. So it perpetuates those messages that we really need hearing and reminding, because we're sort of stuck on autoplay. Like if we're not aware of this language and this communication that's happening between ourselves and our environment, then we are in this perpetual thought and behavior pattern. And so once we expand our awareness, to realize, oh, my home is actually playing a part in the cycles and the patterns and the dynamics that I actually am uncomfortable with, and I want to change that. And so our home is a really great place to change that dynamic and to interrupt the patterns that are happening that aren't actually conducive and supportive of what we want to happen. So I think that's the main point that I want to drive home, is that through observation, through experience, through interpretation of our space and the silent language being communicated with our mostly subconscious mind, we can use our space in a way that supports beneficial change. So If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. If you would like to learn more about this connection between your home and your mind and what's showing up in your life, this is what neurodesign and neurospatial linguistics and consciousness is all about. And the Reset program is a program that takes you room by room through your home, but also connects it to the correlating areas in your life and what's going on in your mind. And so it's based in epigenetics and neuroscience, and it's how we use our environment to help change the inner environment of our mind and body. So if you're interested in learning more, type reset in the comments below. And if you would like to join my certification program, which is all about neurodesign and consciousness and diving into epigenetics and neuroplasticity, type school in the comments below, and I will send you a link to get more information. So just to do a final recap, we're talking about the power of our home and our mind, but specifically how we observe, and how we observe impacts the outcomes that are showing up in our life, and our environment is informing the outcomes that are showing up in our life, and how we can use our home as a platform and a canvas and a catalyst so that we can access those elements of the subconscious mind that are undermining our desires. And we do this because there's a relationship between what's going on within the space of our home, what's going on in the background of our subconscious, and how that's impacting specific areas of our life. And so it's a totally different approach to human flourishing, higher consciousness, design, and it's because we cannot separate who we are and what's going on in our life from what's going on in our environment. And we have two environments. We have the environment of our home, and we have the environment of our mind and body. And what's going on in our environment, just like animals in the wild, what's going on in the environment impacts our ability to thrive, flourish, and evolve. So again, thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to learn more about this approach, type reset in the comments below, and I'll send you a link to the Reset program and my free masterclass, The Power of Home and Mind. And if you are interested in integrating this work into your coaching practice or wellness practice or design practice, type school, and I will send you a link to my program. As always, if you have a question, please feel free to DM me. I also love audio, and thanks for being here. Have a great day.